This is day 580 of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Like sponsor upcoming share more of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Please contact me directly. Be greatly appreciated. Still in Simon Shin Mem. We're doing your test till Chav Vav. Your test. We're told also the derivatives of writing and erasing. Because Rambam so Pergirav, Roshem told us Kosev who making a mark is a derivative of Kosev. Okay, so Roshem is because of somebody who etches a mark or makes a mark on or figures on a wall, b'shishar, and whatever this is type of alternate type of ink, chayotzibem, etc. Kadesh Yetzer Roshmin. Maybe it's a stylus. I'm not sure if it's talking about depending between etching it or drawing it. I raise the chai mishum kosev. You're liable because of writing. Also, if you erase that which is already marked to fix it, I raise the mochek is the mochek v'chayiv, and you're liable. Hakal shoro. V'dai, you know the Mishnah Tanan hakosev shtei osios chayiv says somebody writes two letters is chayiv. Only say chayiv on two letters because of marking. If you didn't write letters or you just made two marks, you're liable. Ayin sham. Because of Rambam, the Roshim have a toloda. As Ram writes, the Roshim is the toloda, the derivative, and not the of. Shmamin adin loch Rabbi Yossi. Clearly, that loch is not like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi have it of because Rabbi Yossi is have malacha. Furthermore, Rabbi Yossi lama tzrich roshamim shel tziurim. Why would we need to have marks of drawings? So I feel roshim ba'amachayiv. If you're just making a mark, in and of itself should be chayiv. So koshkin the drawings. Because of Rambam Rav v'perishim shnais, they look Rabbi Yossi ayin sham. Avol b'yushalmi mashma look Rabbi Yossi. Even though the Rav and the Rambam don't pass Rabbi Yossi, Yushalmi seems like Rabbi Yossi. The bracket says here, I'm Bnei Moshe Maraponish because of Rambam pasuk Rabbi Yossi. Ram does pasuk like Rabbi Yossi. Achen of. It's a Torah the nine of. There's evidence from the fact that Rambam makes you liable when you make marks. It's above 2 minutes. This is astonishing. Roshim Shel Tzura, the Rambam's Roshim is a Roshim of a image. Below Roshim Stam, not making marks. Just plain. Followed in front of by the Pharaoh Mishlo, because the Dana look Rabbi Yossi. Besides the Pharaoh Mishnais, so the look is not like Rabbi Yossi. A bike of the Kosim, not clear, like we wrote, that the Rambam holds, it was not like Rabbi Yossi, notwithstanding the Shalmi V'duk. Chav, because the Rambam begged off the test. Of course, if somebody writes two letters, Chayiv is liable. And if he erases a writing in order to write in the place where he erased the two letters, Chayiv. Hakosev osa achas gedola kishtayim. Write one letter which is as large as two letters. Pot is exempt. Malchak osa achas gedola. If you erased one large letter, v'yeshim koyim l'chtov shtayim, and in the place which you now have, you could write two chayiv. You're liable. Kosev osa achas v'yishlim osa sefer. If you were one letter and you complete with it a sefer, you're chayiv. It's makav patish, right? Hakosev nas l'kalkol, or somebody who I don't know if Chag is Makav Patish, but your ksiva is significant. As I said last night, I think that, or 2 nights ago, that by Oreg, if you finish one chut at the end, it's Makav Patish. Not sure it's really Makav Patish. It could be that it's just Oreg is a significant Oreg. At the end, even one string is significant, not two strings. And here too, at the end of a sefer, even one letter is significant. Not you don't need two. Okay, be that as it may. Or Chayiv. If somebody writes in order to ruin the leather on which he's writing, he's liable. Doesn't matter that he's ruining the place where the writing is written, but it matters that he wrote. Somebody who erases in order to destroy potter is exempt. If ink spilled on a book and he erased it, if wax fell on a notebook, probably here it means one which is like a slate, and removed it, if there is in its place enough to write two letters, chayiv, you're liable. Chafal, v'zeh shekosav nafel sefer gabi sefer nafel dio gabi sefer chulei. Hakamash nafel dio shelo l'ksav. So the ink fell not on the writing, el klaf, but rather on the parchment or near or paper, which is chalak, which is smooth, unwritten. Chein shavos shem pinkas chalak. Also, this wax is on these a smooth tablet. Rush perikla godol hakosib os achas godol. The rush says somebody who writes a large letter, which is just as big as two regular letters, but is exempt. If you erase a large letter, which is large two letters, you're liable. And this is the severity by erasing over writing. Vainu taima. This reason he pamin kasu mishkan tos haker. Sometimes they wrote in the mishkan a mistake. I guess in the numbering of one of the boards. Mochik kedei lichtov acher come and you erase it in order to write another one in its place. You can make a mistake in one letter, so logic should dictate that you can be chayiv even on erasing one letter to write another letter in its place. It's interesting. Doesn't make sense to be mechayiv more for something you're thinking to use for writing than on writing itself. So writing itself is two. When you're thinking to prepare for writing, also has to be two. It says, Rush, I don't think you're liable for erasing a glob of ink. Even you tend to write in its place. Because Michigan they only erased letters, not blobs. They erase them in order to write something else instead. Says Rush, after I wrote this out based on logic, and also from the fact that in the Brisa it says if you erased one letter, right? Erasing, but the sefer goes about nafla dio al sefer machko. If ink fell on a book and erased it, or wax on the tablet and erase it. If you have in that place enough to write two letters, you're chayiv. The time of the it's not clear the reason, because obviously there's a big glob of ink there, a big glob of wax. So what do you mean there's enough place to write? You can say this reason. The os shenichta betos command a letter which is written by mistake is as if it doesn't exist. And the main obligation is for the thought of writing something significant. So therefore, even a smear of ink let's go back. I read this wrong. What do you say with Tosefta? But says it Tosefta. Nafla dio out safe from Makal. If you ink fell on a book and you erased it, Shavim because of logo or wax fell on your tablet and you removed it. If now there's in that place where you remove the ink or the wax enough to write two letters, chayiv reliable. The time of the Barlan. It doesn't seem to go like the Rush himself, because the Rush himself said that it has to definitely be where you're erasing letters and not a tishtush yo. So what you're going to do with this Tosefta? So he says the answer is that anyway, a letter which is written mistakenly is like a glob of ink. It's no different. It's as if it's not there. It's the wrong thing. The ikar chiyuv because the main obligation is for intending to write something and writing it. Therefore, even a smudge of ink, right? If you erase it, it's the same thing like erasing a wrong letter, and therefore, if it's preparing to write over, you're chayiv. Why? So why is it in the Brisa who erased a large letter? I talk about writing a large letter, so they'll talk about the converse, which is erasing a large letter. Chenesh Vash Divi Ram Kaushal, and the quote from the Rosh. Chenesh Vash Divi Rama, this would be Shad and Rama says Oshulchan. Possession because of Mikon Mochak Os Chule, Lav Dafka. It's not in the Rama wrote, erasing a letter, it's not specific. Because the Mechika Lo Bain Os. And erasing, you don't need it to be a letter. Yesh also b'tam mishum lezel melechas machshavas. Also add the reason this is melechas machshavas, thoughtful work. Shemoed Yoshel Dior, Chidei L'chtov, if you erase the smudge of ink on the paper in order to write on it, that is melechas machshavas. You intend to use it for a constructive purpose. Chabes, Kama Turkos of Cain. Also the Tur writes, Hamochik Tishish Yoshel Gad Klaf, somebody erases a smudge of ink from the parchment. Shava, Pingos, or the wax on the tablet. If there is in its place now enough room to write 2 letters, Chayav. Sif Gimel. So to Shulchan Aruch. As long as Bir Alocha writes that which Mechaber says that you have to have in the place you erase the ink enough to write 2 letters. It's talking about where the ink did not fall on the letters themselves. But if the ink fell on some letter and that letter got ruined and you're erasing it in order to write another letter there, which is going to be fixed, you're liable because of for erasing even just this one letter. Obviously, he gives it the chashivas. Also writes that if in the erasing itself there's some tikkun, such as where there's something which is written there about what he owes his friend, or his friend owes him, and that was no longer the case, and therefore you have to erase it. So you also chai because of the mechika, even without the ksiba afterwards, because it's erasing that which does not exist is in and of itself a constructive activity. Okay, back to the Arukh HaShulchan. The Chen Rosh HaShulchan Siv Gimel. That if you even moving a blot of ink is also a form of mochi. And even then, even if there wouldn't be enough in that space to write 2 letters, Asim Rabbana, it's still a rabbinic prohibition. Be careful if wax falls on a book. Lois Shenasako, don't remove it on Shabbos. Even only fell on 1 letter, or kumlo os achas, or the equivalent of 1 letter. If it fell on 2 letters, or the size of 2 letters, then you remove the wax chayav chatos. The Raisa. Some people are not sure about this. Gamel Simon Lamed Bezis Barbazar spoke about way back when. Nevertheless, equal the primary lochas the B'Shabbos having its garment side Shabbat, Shabbat and Shabbos, a complete prohibition to remove wax which fell on the letters. Also, when there's wax holding 2 pages together in where the letters are, also you're not allowed to separate them. She's very careful about this. It's very easy to come to a prohibition. Obviously, when they use wax candles, it's much more prevalent than it is today. Mishnah Berurah says the Prima Godim allowed you to scrape away wax from 1 letter by non-Jew. Okay, it's gotta be, I'm not sure what Shas of Chak requires you to do that. Perhaps it's the Sefer Torah. Mishnah Berurah says that if it is, I assume that's the case. That's why it's so urgent. Mishnah Berurah says that if it's indeed the middle of Kriyas HaTorah, even though you're not allowed to move the wax or the fat, nevertheless, you shouldn't take out another Torah for that. Well, in that case, not true. Shas Chak is the previous one. Rather, you should read that word Baal Peh. Some say if it is between aliyahs that you found it, you should take another Sefer Torah out if the letters cannot be distinguished under the coating of wax. Hello?
Good evening, Rabbi.
Chav Gimel. Because I've been around Mavasib Gimel. That's the Shabbat Ugo Shekosova Love Kolekmin Osios. One of the great Shilas, Halachic Parshas, and Klal Yisrael. Cakes with letters on Shabbos. If you're not allowed to break a cake on which written on it something like letters, even though you only have in mind to eat the cake, you're erasing the writing. Even though you're not erasing in order to write over it. Nevertheless, there's a rabbinic prohibition. According to this, you should it would be also to erase designs in this way. Why is the world not capable of this? Perhaps because all of these designs or letters which they make on these confections, they are from the dough itself or from a sauce. That is not considered to be writing, because it's also food. It's food on top of food, not writing on top of food. But the gamre would be permissible altogether. It says, "Magavron says the name of Knesset Gdola." Kavaz Rabbeinu Ramahu shekosuf osios b'dio tzeva, and the Ramah perhaps is only referring to letters written in ink or some other dye. That's the case. If you wrote the letters in honey mixed with water, no problem. Those who allow this all together, even if it's in other materials. Came as a shame to see a cloud. It's not considered writing, and I guess separately, what we're doing now is just ruining klachayad, and only indirectly. Famous Shum is no prohibition. The Shabura says you can rely on this when you don't break the letters with your hands, only when you chew on them in your mouth, and thus they get broken. Apparently, they used to write, the case of is one which they used to write the letters on as a special skula, a mystical procedure. That a child should eat them to become smart. Because that was their good custom. Nevertheless, it's best to give the place of letters to a child. So Arukh HaShulchan is even concerned with you chewing them, not just cutting them. But from the strict letter of law, it's not prohibited. This is most poskim are mako to eat the letters. As they consider that derech achila. A lot of poskim are machir not to cut the letters because that considered to be derech mechika. But the Rav Avadia Sefer, if I recall correctly, I believe many Sfarim knowing accordingly allows you even to cut the letters themselves. And of course, we see from the Arukh HaShulchan Yesham B'Lismoch. So this also would be true in the old days. We used to have problems with plastic bottle caps that they used to have like numbers printed on the seam. And the question is whether you can open the cap when you have numbers printed on the seam, or maybe those numbers, because they're made of little dots, not even really numbers, they're like pixels. It's an interesting question. It's to those who prohibit opening a book, where you have letters written on the chudei hadapim. As here, most of them have patterns, but sometimes you get a sefer has been, but somebody has decided, especially a library book, to either write or stamp something on those letters. When you open them, it's like you're erasing. It's lavush, chokolov, it's a taz. It's a Rabbeinu B'tshuva. That the came to us to lift off. We know aim is a mochek v'lokoseh be'en zaklum. The book is written to open and shut. Therefore, there's no mochek and no writing, no writing, no writing. It's nothing. Second, delis haniftach the nizkar tamid is like a door which constantly opening and closing. The emblem shum binyan steer. It's not considered to be every time you open it, destroying, and every time you close it, constructing. Here too, there's no issue ksiva mechika. Shmuel says that's a minhag, but nevertheless, it's best in macher if you have another sefer available. And it's better. The Sharatzian says it's best not to have come in such a situation to have books which you have markings on the side. You should avoid writing things on the sides of books or printing things on the sides of books. Good idea. I believe the present day minhag is to be machmir if possible, but to be meko if it's not possible. Okay, Chav Dalet. Let's get today. Chav Dalet. Hakosib oskfula pamayim ushem echad. You write the same letter twice, and it makes a word. Going rar, tat, gag, gad, shesh, sas, chach. Let's remember all these are Hebrew words. Chayev. But when they don't make up a word, you're exempt. It's Magid Mishnah. Bill writes that some Rishon hold your chayiv even if it doesn't make up a word. Evidently, the Arukh HaShulchan does not hold with like that Mishnah. Because the B'chol Ksab Sign writes in any language, in any handwriting, B'chol Lush in any language, chayiv. Even with two signs, which are like they're not marks, but they're signs. Symbols. Symbols the word for. Even the two different types of ink. The two samanios mentioned here, the two symbols are referring to the letters. Such a way you read them upside down. Kenunim hafuchim sheva parshas by Hibin Sarah, like the upside down noon before and after by Hibin Sarah. The chol shalav tmunas osa afilu hafuchai. If anything which looks like a letter, even if it's upside down, you're liable. Chavei hakosib os achas samach laksav. You write one letter next to other letters. Klomash eitzel os ksuva mikvar, by a letter which is already written. Kismich os sheni lo. You put another letter next to it. You write on top of writing. Took your pen and put it and pulled it over letters already written. Both these cases are exempt. You didn't make anything new. Well, Mishmur points out the obvious thing: if this letter completed a sefer, you're chayav, because then that's one letter you wrote. In the first case here, has an effect. I would say I'm not sure. It's not even by where you have one letter which completes a word. Till now the word was not complete. Now the word is complete. Why only when it completes the sefer? Could be that the pshat is that the completing a sefer is makabatish, and by completing a word is not makabatish because the sefer still goes on. Could be. So back to Arukh HaShulchan. We're talking about where it's ink. Does Ben Shei, the original writing was ink. Does Ben Shei Bir Aksaba Shei Shel Dio Ben Shel Tseba? So then the second writing on top of it, whether it's an ink or color, pots are exempt. Grigari make it worse. The first one was written in a color. And then you traced it with ink. Chayav Shtein, chayav twice. One because you're erasing. You erase the color. One because of writing. The because you upgraded it. The Diodi Mitzeva, ink is superior to dye. But if it was already Tseva and you put on it more Tseva, if you mean Tseva Acher, but it's a different kind of color, parts are exempt, ink on Mechika, it's not erasing, Tseva Kayon because it's still colored. Looks even there's a writing, because whatever was written previously as well. Brackets, when you put color on ink, it's still written. You just made it worse. That's not called mechika. Mechika is called erasing. This is writing, even though you're making it worse writing. And he's the with Yoel Tseva, with ink on color, Mikun Chayav Ksiva. There, since you're chayav on ksiva, you're chayav on mechiko, which is a big chiddush. Tseva shel dio having mekalka, putting color on top of ink, that's just ruining, and therefore your part. So vorbic can you test. Chavav, v'chein miskam lichtov ches. Somebody had in mind to write a ches because of shnei zaynim, two zayins, zaz. Chein gets sharos is similar in other letters. Potter is exempt. It's not meleches machshavas. He's of os achas ba'aretz, os achas b'kora. We wrote one letter on the ground and one in the roof. We also brought the shrei neg and zemzeh because they have to be able to be seen as being able to be pronounced together. Chein b'shnei kslayim, so too by on two walls. B'shnei dapei pinkas are on two pages of a ledger. Before I translate that as tablets, it's not a tablet, it's a ledger. And murchakim zemzeh when they're distant from each other, they can't be put together. Potter. But if you wrote them on two walls at the corner, or on two pages of this ledger, one at the end and one at the beginning. I guess the ledger, and what that we're talking about is goes like this, as opposed to opening sideways. Al near cloth makes them as you're writing on paper or on parchment. Al eitzim or on wood. Al is a dover or something else. Since the writing is recognizable and is permanent, in other words, it's going to last, you are liable.